عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله غريب يا مظلوم عطشان كربلاء يا باب نجاة الأمة ما خاب من تمسك بكم وأمن من لجأ إليكم سيدي إن لم يجبك بدني عند استنصارك فقد أجابك قلبي وسمعي وبصري روحك روح النبوة تصعد من الأرض للفردوس والحور سجد رأسك رأس الرسول على القنا بآية أهل الكهف راح يردد أمك أم الكتاب تنهدت فذاب نشيجا قلبها المتنهد وقد نصب وحي الأعزاء ببيته عليك حدادا والمعزى محمد وشاطرت الأرض السماء بشجوها فواحدة تنعى وأخرى تعدد وأي قتيل وأي شهيد وأي ذبيح داست الخيل صدره وفرسانها من ذكره تتجلى يا مدعو لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم قال الله في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم نور قلوبكم وزينوا مجالسكم. Please beautify this gathering and this majlis on the night of the eve of the holy month of Muharram al-Haram with a very loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It was narrated by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, to which he had said on multiple occasions, Al-ulama warathatul anbiya, that the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. The ulama, scholarship, these, according to every Islamic worldview, are the next best thing after the ma'sumin. Ask yourself a logical question. In the absence of a publicly accessible ma'soom, in the absence of the anbiya, the a'imma, who can be seen as the next best source for guidance, spiritual navigating, getting closer to your Lord on a deep personal level? These are the scholars. Hence, the Prophet describes them as inheritors of the prophets. What they left behind from wisdom, from teachings, from gems, intellectual contributions, they fell in the hands of these individuals, be them men or women. Scholarship does not know gender. It also does not know age. You've seen young children who are beacons of intellectuality, and you've also as well seen those up of the hundreds in their age. People who have sacrificed their lives to getting closer to Allah on an intellectual level. Inshallah ta'ala, this series aims to look and examine a number of pertinent questions and controversies surrounding our heritage of scholarship. Questions such as, have we ever seen the case that a scholar met Imam al-Mahdi? Knowing the Imam, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, is among us today, have there been ulama that met him? A very relevant question for especially the Shia lover of the Ahlul Bayt. Have we seen scholars compete on a level where they face other ulama from different worldviews? How did they match? When you compare methodologies between one group versus another, Sunni and Shia, what are the difference between the scholarship relevancy? How can I connect to a scholar? How can I become an Ayatollah? College or Hawza? What do I decide when I reach a pertinent age? Have there been women maraji' or no? These are relevant questions that in the 21st century we face. Tonight's discussion revolves around the following. You can consider it like an opener. Al-ulama, as narrated by Rasulullah, warathatul anbiya. Why does he say this? A man from the Ansar of the people of Medina asked Rasulullah this question. He said, Ya Rasulullah, in the following context, I found myself in a situation where I saw a janazah procession happening. Someone had passed away and people were taking him to be buried. But at the same time, there was a scholarly gathering happening nearby. Obviously, I can only attend one of them. Ya Rasulullah, between attending a tashyi', someone had passed, an upright person, a mu'min, it's not like every day they die. This is the only time they have a tashyi', where they're being taken to be buried. And the scholarly gathering is going on. They're sitting down, they're discussing pertinent issues, problems and challenges facing the youth, mathalan, questions about Allah, just a discussion, but one of intellectuality. Which one should I attend if I find myself in this situation? And then apply this today in your worldview. You might find an opportunity to gain ilm, but you might find another opportunity to do good. Which one is more favorable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do you know what Rasulullah said? He said that there are certain rights that the deceased person has. If those rights are being met, Ya Jama'at al-Khair, if they're being met, is that person going to be given his due? Will they be buried properly? Is there someone to wash them and do the salah on them? Has the obligations been checked for that person? The man said, let's say he has. He has everyone taking care of him. Then he says, the Prophet mentions, then you attend the scholarly gathering past that Fatiha. Says why? He says one gathering of ulama, majalisatul ulama, is greater than 1,000 funerals you'll ever attend. 1,000. Then the Prophet says it's as well considered better than attending to 1,000 marda, those who are unwell. He says just sitting like 5 minutes with these people who've studied a bit in their life, but learning their ta'aleem, their lessons and wisdoms and gems and pearls of intellectuality, that is much favorable, more than even visiting 1,000 ill people and tending to them. He says it is greater than standing at night in salah, 1,000 nights. And it is greater than fasting the days 1,000 times. And it is greater than going to Hajj, the non-wajib Hajj, so just the regular Hajj that's mufrada, that's not wajib. Better 1,000 times. And it is greater than dying for Allah in jihad, fi sabilillah, 1,000 times. Just sitting down with people intellectuality. Why is that the case? That is a very massive conclusion. We get ilm is important. But where did that come from, that emphasis? It is because All of these things you heard listed right now by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, none of these would have any relevance had it not been for the people of ilm. Who tells you about a jihad fi sabilillah besides the alim that inspires you? How many ulama could you think of today, from those of the past and those of today? When you think jihad, who gives you the shari'iyah to do anything like that? When you go to hajj, 1,000 times better than that, according to the Holy Messenger of God, which is not hajjatul wajib, we're just putting the obligations to the side. He says it's them. You'll learn this at the end of the day. It comes from these sources of guidance and wisdom. That is all to emphasize the importance of people who have strived and struggled. Hence why the top quality of the scholarly world, you know what they call them? Mujtahids. Why? From the etymology, ijtihad, jihad. They've struggled. It's not easy to gain ilm, to push aside some of your other interests, some of the distractions of this dunya. You find yourself at awe in front of these individuals. Hence, Allah favors them. In fact, we have a very deadly hadith. And this is by consensus narrated, to which the Prophet says, and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, that inna midad al-ulama. And in another hadith, hibr al-ulama. The ink and the pen of the scholars, if it was to be weighed, and don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean there's no value on the opposite side. But if it was to be weighed with the blood of the shuhada, on the day of judgment, the ink of the ulama is heavier. Because where did that shaheed learn his role if it wasn't for that alim, al-Rabbani, who showed him motivation, who told him there is batil, you have to rise. That source, that's where the sun comes from. Every one of these are all anwar, radiance. But there's a source. And that was the fountain of wisdom manifested in our scholars. There was a beautiful hadith by the famous Luqman, the wise man. You know him as Luqman al-Hakim. And there's a whole surah in the Quran called literally Surah Luqman. And it has a lot of gems to share. Let's look at what he has to say. He has a very interesting one. He begins a lot of his advice by telling his son. He has a son and he gives him reminders. Ya bunay, la tashrik billah. My son, don't associate with Allah anything. Ya bunay, worship the one and only. He gives him beautiful common sense advice. There lays a piece of advice that is really beautiful in the world of hadith, to which he says something quite interesting. Ya bunayya, jalisil ulama'a wa zahimhum bi rukbatayk. Oh my son, sit among the scholars. Then he says something typically you don't associate what should be done with the scholars. They say when you meet someone of importance, la zahma. Don't inconvenience them. Zahma, inconvenience, burdensome. We say this is a zahma. Don't burden someone with too many questions, mathalan, with too many favors. Don't bother that person. What was narrated here by Luqman al-Hakim appears to say the opposite. وَزَاحِمْهُمْ بِرُكْبَتَيْكَ. What's the rukbah? Your knees. And so in one way, what is he saying? Sit with the scholars and trouble them with your knees. Like, what does that mean? It is an expression to say, I need you to sit so close to him that I need your knees basically to be touching his knees as well. Be facing them. Be as close as you can in the gatherings with that individual. Zahimhum. If you want, call yourself a zahma. And don't feel insecure to ask questions. Ya Habibi, you'll never learn if you don't ask. Don't feel a bit insecure. He might judge me. He wouldn't be an alim. She wouldn't be an alima, let's not forget, if they were ever going to judge you. But you have to first determine who you can share this sensitive, critical information with. We have a very famous narration. La haraja fil fiqh. There is no insecurities when it comes to Islamic law. Yani what? That pressing question that you have, you don't know the answer, but what's holding you back is you're a bit insecure, a bit embarrassed, a bit shy. There is no such thing as haraj when it comes to Islamic law. You need to ask, especially if they're questions related to purity, related to your day-to-day. And it's just an answer. And by the way, you're not the first person to ask. You'll never be the first person to ask. Someone before you has asked as well. And in the world of, alhamdulillah, technology, you could just look up online. Of course, mind you, look up and find the right sources. Maybe don't ask ChatGPT immediately, but look up a valuable, reputable source. My situation here. You'd be surprised to see that there are some brothers and some sisters who have still not nailed down Islamic tahara of ahkam of janaba, and they're in their late 50s. And it's not like they just came to Islam. They were born into Islam, but what held you back? Well, I'm too embarrassed to ask my mom and dad. So if you're too embarrassed to ask mama, baba, I imagine you're going to be embarrassed to ask the alim in that case, or the sheikh, or the sayyid. There's no such thing as haraj. Ask. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen would emphasize this so much. His famous lines. I'm going to leave. إِذَنْ سَلُونِي قَبْلَ أَنْ تَفْقِدُونِي. Ask me before you miss me. You'll never get a chance again. And that's Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. What about the alim that I see who comes and goes? You need to ask to learn. And don't feel insecure. They would never judge you, because one of the conditions of scholarship is that they're also adil. They're also just. And just means that they're not here to judge you. This is the line of career they came in. You're not ashamed to ask your doctor about pertinent questions that is like, listen, between you and me, don't tell my mom this, I have this issue. What's wrong with that? You want to address a concern, you have to talk in that kind of manner. So when it comes to spiritual concerns, it becomes the most impossible thing ever. It shouldn't be that way. One thing that we must also keep in mind is a healthy society today is one that has a scholar they can lean back on. And some might say, well, in my community, I really don't have that relationship. There are two things you must do. The first thing is find and see the necessity of establishing a relationship with an alim deen personally. There is no excuse today, brothers and sisters, not to have on your phone. If you don't have this now, figure it out. And it's not impossible, by the way. Ulama are receptive to this, inshallah. It's their career. And why else did they get into this? If they're not interested in helping other people, check your phone. Do I have a number that, hey, at night, I have a question, I don't know what to do. When I see blood, do I have to pour once water or is it twice? Yeah, I heard once, twice. What do I do in this case? Do you have a source to answer? You look up online, is this the Sunni answer or is it the Shia one? And that's where it becomes more confusing. It would be helpful if you could just send that message. And what's more beautiful is if you have a relationship established. Some of the most humble people are these individuals that we overlook at times. And some might say, look, I'll be honest with you, I wish I could have this relationship with the local alim, local sheikh, but not my worldview. It's not my dynamic. I barely go out. He's doing his thing. How am I going to catch him? Some of the sisters might be like, okay, I see him. He's in the men's side. We want me to go say, I can't reach the guy. How do I do this? Blessings from Allah involve internet as well. The world has become small, brothers and sisters. Have reach and access. Social media exists. It's not about, let's make friends with someone, although that's very good. And among the greatest of friends are those that remind you of Allah. What about, there are those whose career is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His hidayah towards Rabbil Alameen. But that should be something you should establish. Because if it doesn't hit you now, it's going to hit you later. I'm lost. I'm disorientated. The timing for fast. Hadd al-tarakhus. These are real world issues. How far do I travel to which now my salah becomes qasr, where I have 50% off essentially. How far is that? Was it 47 miles or is it 47 kilometers? It would be helpful if you have that. And trust me, when you look at that narration, zahimhum. Bother them. See, I don't consider myself a scholar at all. But some of my friends like to think I know one or two things. The phone calls come at 2 a.m. sometimes. They think, Sayyidina Ba'd, you decided to open that door. We're going to ask you a question. But the thing is, they won't bother you unless they have a pressing question. So you have to consider that as well. Have a source of information that is at least credible. That's all we're saying. And you don't necessarily need to have direct mutual relationship, but at least have something, brothers and sisters. If not for yourself, for your teen son, for your little brother or sister. That's something that if we don't have now, I genuinely think is a crisis. You're just going with the flow at that point, hoping that you did the right hukum of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing, brothers and sisters, in a very healthy Islamic lifestyle is to have an attachment. We said with a scholar that's present today, have an attachment with a scholar of the past. Find your inspiration in those who came before you. See, we have a narration by Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, alayhi salam, to which he says, Al-alimu hayy wa in kana mayyit, wal jahilu mayyit wa in kana hayyan. That the scholar is always alive. I ask you a question, and don't even need to say names or go to specific individuals. How many ulama left us recently? It's as if they never left, from how much you remember them. Daily. How many ulama, we still talk about them today. How many juhal, however, are there that they're living today? It's as if they're dead to you. Do you know these people exist? Can you think of a few people who cross your mind? That he has died like 40 years ago. Like September of last year, 26th. But as if he's among me today. From how much I remember him. His motivation, his inspiration. هذا حي وإن كان ميت. And the jahil is dead. وإن كان حي. Find a scholar to hold on to, historically speaking, brothers and sisters. Cling on to someone. Look up the lectures. I encourage you. Whether it's someone like Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, Ayatollah Sayyid al-Kho'i, Sayyid Musa al-Sadr, Sayyid Muhammad al-Shirazi, Sayyid al-Imam, Sayyid al-Qa'id, Sayyid Ali Sistani. These people, some of them are alive, but hold on to them as inspiration. These are our ulama. These are our next best thing. I encourage you to hold on to the thaqalain as much as possible. But how do you understand the thaqalain? Through whose worldview? Who teaches you about the kitab and the itra? You run into some of these people. By the way, inshallah, the upcoming lectures, you might have a movement that will tell you there's no need to do any more taqleed. And all we have is from the khabar, and that's sufficient for us. And then you ask them, okay, if that's the case, it's good for you, I don't mind. It's a free country, inshallah, right? I hope. And you're entitled to your opinion, okay? There's one disclaimer. When you get to the Holy Quran and you see an ayah like the following, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Tilka idhan qismatun dhiza. Ask, what does a qisma that is dhiza means? What does that mean? I don't know. So what are you going to do? I have to refer to an alim who wrote a tafsir. And then your case is closed. You have to also do taqleed to some aspect. In this case, the heritage that they leave behind, hold on to someone of the past. Hold on to someone today and make sure you find them as a source of motivation. Ask youth, who inspires you? They'll tell you a cartoon character. That's fine. That's what they watch. You can't blame them. I sometimes question the parenting. That their inspiration is a Disney character. Disney, by the way, back in the 90s was a bit more conservative, a bit more tahir. Disney today is you're watching something PG-13, but it's for kids. Al-'ayadhu billah, some of the frivolous clothing, the provocativeness, the equal gender aspects, in the case where you find like princesses marrying and finding another girl that's interesting for her. It's going brainwashing mode. That, hold on, I decide how I raise my kids. One of the best source of motivation for youth is you remind them of some of the nice and beautiful contributions of the ulama. I'll give you an example. There was an alim by the name of Ayatollah Sayyid Hussein al-Barujurdi. He was among the maraji' of his era in the 1950s. Sayyid Hussein Barujurdi, a lesson about not caring about what people say about you. Sometimes cartoons will teach your kids, sticks and stones may break my bones. But the best source of information are from the scholars as well. It's because number one, they're real stories. Number two, they're your role models. And number three, there are genuine levels of wisdom to gain from. Sayyid Hussein Barujurdi is a scholar. He's in Qom. He's the marji'. Word reached him that there is someone in a city far off in Iran. This is also a scholar of his town. He's talking about you. He's bad-mouthing you. Who does Sayyid Hussein think he is? Coming to Qom, establishing marji'iyya. I've been here. I know the concerns of the community. This man just comes out of nowhere from Najaf. He's bad-mouthing him. And don't do his taqleed, people. Sayyid Hussein Barujurdi said, he's speaking about me? I said, yes, Sayyidina. He says, what does he say? He says, your taqlid is not correct. He says, could you tell me his name? They give him the man's name. Sayyid Barujurdi says, oh, Ajib. That man doesn't realize that I send him weekly paychecks through a source that I tell him, don't tell him where he gets the money from. I am feeding his family, his children, because that sheikh in that far off town is a bit stranded. It's a town in the middle of nowhere. And so he requested if someone could help me, financially speaking. That person he requested came to me and I said, come every week and I'll give it. He's speaking about me not knowing that I am taking care of his livelihood. They say, Sayyidina, so what do you want to do now? You should cut it off, shouldn't you? Some of us would just do that, by the way. You talk about me. You talk about me, I'm going to cut off all your rizq. Some parents will do that to their children, but this is very sad. Ibni, I've raised you, I've taken care of you. Khalas, the way you behave, the way you speak to me, I'll cut off all your rizq. Yani if you're hurt, if you're oppressed, try to keep a window open, brothers and sisters, that maybe one day they'll change. Or your brother or your sister. It takes just one mistake, subhanAllah, and it's as if you never knew them all over. Look at what Sayyid Hussein Barujurdi does. He says, and what am I going to say to Allah on Yawm al-Qiyamah? What will I say to him? That I cut off a man's livelihood. He might have children that I don't know about. He's talking about me? Who cares? Who cares? And then he says something so profound, I would like all of your attention. This, if you tell it to your Christian friend, if you tell it to your atheist friend, it is a motivating piece of wisdom. He said, they talk about Allah, and Allah still gives them rizq. They talk about me. What does that even mean? It's true. They talk about Allah, and Allah is still the Razzaq for them. If they talk about you, that's not a problem. In fact, if you're principled, dare I say, you have principles, you stand up for something, expect people will talk about you. An unprincipled individual has no enemies, which is wrong. It's counterintuitive to say that you should have enemies. Because in life, who looks to have problems? I'm happy when someone who finds it normal to be complacent on genocide is my enemy. That's good. You have to have the right enemies. I'm happy that people who find it okay to belittle the status of Ahlul Bayt, who love people like Yazid ibn Muawiyah, hate me. I think that's pretty good to have that enemy. I would think so. Because if you have only friends and no enemies, you have nothing to stand for. And when you have nothing to stand for, you fall for everything. Sayyid Barujurdi said that line. He says, they talk about Allah. If they're not talking about me, that means I have a problem. It's okay. And Allah still gives him rizq. He wakes up, he still breathes. Allah allowed him to do that. I will still continue to offer him rizq. That motivational story, teach that to some of your children. Teach that to some of your little siblings. Before them, teach it to yourself. Learn, do I apply some of these? Speaker included. Yeah, I'm speaking, but do I apply that? Because it ticks me off when I hear, did you know so-and-so said this about you? It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. They say this about Allah. They say worse. There are people who deny Allah on a daily basis vehemently. Allah says, I'll still give them a chance. Who cares? They don't know any better. I apply this in my life. Where did I get this from? From those who are the beacons of knowledge, scholarship. There's a disclaimer we have to make though. 2 disclaimers. Number 1, always remember that the scholars are not infallible. This is important to keep in mind. Why? Because sometimes people expect from the alim that which only the ma'soom can do. You have to think about it. You'll appreciate your local sheikh that you just, here and there, salam maulana, ma'a salama. You'll appreciate him a bit more. Why? Because when you have a scholar, what does society expect from that alim? They expect him to not just be someone who answers their ahkam al-fiqhiyya. Maulana, is this najis, tahir? Is khums wajib here or is it not? Do I have to pray now or no? When is hadd al-tarakhus? When is salat al-fajr? Exactly. When is suhoor? When is... Not just ahkam, that's the bare minimum. Scholars, do you know what they're expected to do? They have to be counselors. Maulana, I'm dealing with a problem with my missus at home. She talked back at me. What do I do? You want me to give you a dua, مثلا? What can I offer you? Yani, what can I do? But even then, the alim sits and listens. Why? Maybe I can give you words of wisdom. I read in a hadith, words of motivation by Ahlul Bayt, that in times of family discord, you titwajjah ilallah and have sabr, for example. So there's a counselor-therapist moment. There's that role. He has to wear many hats. Another hat, someone who has to ensure that a society is striving and they have to make sure that there's no confusion happening. At the end of the day, Rasulullah says that the alim in a community is like the prophet with his people. The alim in the community is like the prophet among his people. They have to look at the community's issues and concerns. That's why khutbah al-Jum'ah, the sermons of Friday, there's two khutbah. One is theological, spiritual. The second is what? Social. What's bothering and troubling the youth today? What's concerning them? What are the distractions? What's TikTok? Is that haram? What's happening on there? What's my kid listening to? They have to follow up on real world events and news. That's just local. They have to also follow up international. Why? Because من سمع مناديا ينادي يا للمسلمين ولم يجبه فليس بمسلم. They have to hear the calls and concerns of the Muslims worldwide. That's our religion. That's what makes me a Shia. What makes me Shia is that the Ahlul Bayt spoke. If you see concern in the world, من سمع مناديا, not من سمع سنيا or شيعيا, من سمع أحد ينادي يا للمسلمين. Where are you? Help me. And if you don't answer, فليس بمسلم. There's a lot of people who are not Muslims, unfortunately. Hearing a call of someone oppressed, those who rise, they have to rise with concern. The first are always who? The scholars. They know that here is my responsibility. I have to calm down a community. When there's an act of Islamophobia, you look for what does that scholar have to say now? Because they speak on my behalf. They represent our voice. However, always remember that they're not ma'soom. They're not infallible. And this can lead to crisis sometimes. Because when a person sees a mistake by maybe someone they look up to, you know what that leads, by the way. It leads to some form of trauma. The person I saw as virtually the prophet manifest in everything he has to say could make a mistake. Yeah. Last I checked, there were 14 ma'sumin. Sometimes you might see an error, a flaw. They might have a moment where they get angry. Don't be shocked. I remember one of my awakening moments growing up personally was when I saw our local sheikh shopping at the store without his imamah, wearing normal clothes. I'm like, Shaykhna, is that you? A'udhu billah. Like 9-year-old. What's going on? Baba, everything is a lie. It's kind of like you see your teacher not in school. It's haram for you to be here. No, you have to be somewhere else. Because they live in the masjid, right? But then there are times where you might genuinely confront. There was a mistake that was made. That's not the end of the world, by the way. They're not infallible. But they teach you and they do their best to try to mitigate as much flaw as possible. And if, this is hard to swallow though, but if you can, this will save you many issues. If one of them appears to have done haram, I make this very clear, that you say, did an alim deen just violate something? Remember, they were not genuinely a scholar from that beginning. They were not. Because a scholar would know what the responsibility is. There are those, you have to make it very clear, this is the second point, who appear to be as scholars. That's fine. You can dress however you like. But, we should have more standard, honestly. There's a thing called false valor. You know what that means? False valor. It's when you impersonate someone and their role, whether it's like a doctor, this is in the United States primarily, a doctor or like a military personnel by wearing their clothing. It's illegal. Or like a police officer. You're basically wearing the clothes of someone who has a specific career and you are not part of that career. And you begin giving unsolicited advice. We don't tolerate that for doctors, for police officers, legitimately. So who are you going to misguide people? You haven't studied and now you're already doing the job? That's not right, logically. Why has it been tolerated so much on those who decide to say, look, I'm an alim deen. Prove it. I'm wearing the clothes. Is that it? Or is that sufficient? This doesn't mean you cast doubt on people. It just means that, listen, this is a career that is given to those who have fulfilled a certain amount of study. So the first thing you do is ask just one question. That's it. Just ask one question. Where did you study? That's all. That's it. Maulana, where did you study? MashaAllah, you're new to town. What happened? Charlatans do exist. Anyone can decide to just wear these kind of clothing. Which, by the way, you have to also remember, there's a difference between a speaker and an alim. Not every speaker is a scholar. Not every scholar is a speaker. Don't conflate the two. You have to make sure there's a contrast. I might be sharing something, but that sounds pretty smart. Khalas, you're Maulana, Ayatollah, Sheikh, Mufti. La. I just read something and I'm telling you it. If you genuinely want to see guidance, especially if it's between you and Allah, you have an answer that rests on my dhimmah. Dhimti majghula. Yawm al-Qiyamah, why didn't you do this? And I expected it. Well, I asked the so-and-so. Make sure the source is good for you. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam says, عَجِبْتُ لِمَنْ يَتَفَكَّرُ فِي مَأْكُولِهِ كَيْفَ لَا يَتَفَكَّرُ فِي مَعْقُولِهِ. I'm astonished at the one who always thinks about what they're going to eat, but never thinks about what they're going to think about from the source of information they receive. كَيْفَ لَا يَتَفَكَّرُ فِي مَعْقُولِهِ. There's something called the ma'qud, the aql. How do you not give so much emphasis to the aql as much as you give emphasis to the batin? You don't give your insides corrupt, poisoned food. Likewise, don't nourish your intellectuality with corrupt, poisoned information because the source of water was poisoned. Just ask a question, that's all. And inshallah ta'ala, all the ulama you see, who you confront in life, inshallah they're upright people. And very much so, most, if not all of them here, are absolutely. But there are times that we live, brothers and sisters, a TikTok speaker sounds very nice. An Instagram speaker, mashallah. But make sure if it's your deen, don't compromise on it. Ask, look for information. To always remember that they're not infallible. And they're just like you. They just went through a study, a series, a journey, and they learned. So keep these main points in mind. Have established a relationship between someone in your life today, and there's no more excuses anymore. Someone from the world of scholarship, an alim, an alima. And this is something we so need, especially for the sisters as well. That there are women who have studied, and they exist, by the way. And there are many. It just takes, ask a couple questions. Who do you know who I could ask these questions that concern only me? Pertinent to female relative issues. I know you just said, Sayyidina, La haraja fil fiqh, ana muhraj. This is a question I will have haraj if I ask that guy. As much as I respect him and his ilm. It's like, where do I go in that case? This is a crisis. We need to have female scholarships, and they do exist, by the way. They're present. But ana mahroom, I live in Sydney, so far away. Where do I know someone? Welcome to 2025. It's called Instagram. It's called Google. It's called ask him or her. Maybe they know someone who's went, and they do exist. Today, there's no more excuses. Honestly, I keep emphasizing this because some people say, I didn't know. Well, you could have known. And you saying, I don't know, is not going to fly on Yawm al-Qiyamah. What do you mean you didn't know? Al-alim asbaha qarya. Keep this in mind and remember very clearly that one of the most beautiful reminders lays in the fact that when the messenger says, these are inheritors of the Anbiya, look at the greatest inheritor of the Anbiya, Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam. Because when we say, al-ulama warathatul Anbiya, they receive from the prophets that which they've left behind from intellectual contributions. You know who the biggest warith of the Anbiya are? Sayyid al-Shuhada. What does that make him then? Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. It makes Imam al-Hussein the biggest alim. You may not associate Sayyid al-Shuhada as Imam Hussein the scholar. And we know he is, definitely very much, the scholar of scholars. But typically you associate and affiliate Sayyid al-Shuhada with what? Sacrifice, shaja'ah, altruism, bravery. In the real world today, If you confront a non-Muslim, something that is useful is to say, I am mourning someone who was the greatest scholar ever. The disclaimer obviously means that you don't include in that the Prophet of Islam and the other Imams of Ahlul Bayt. But this is how you speak to someone who sees Imam al-Hussein just like a historical figure. So you mentioned very clearly that I am mourning a scholar. Why? Because Assalamu alayka ya waritha Adama safwatillah. Peace be upon you, or the inheritor of Adam alayhi salam, the inheritor of Noah, the inheritor of Isa, Ibrahim, the inheritor of Musa, and the inheritor of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. If the ulama are inheritors and that makes them ulama, then what about the inheritor of these anbiya? What does that make him? Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam. Now, some might ask, Sayyidina, if I take a scholar as a motivation from the past, if I look at someone today and I say, hey, look, you and me, Shaykhna Sayyidina, we're going to have, inshallah, a great relationship. We're going to be in touch for good. You know how Sayyid said, وَزَاحِمْهُمْ بِرُكْبَتَيْكَ, I'm going to destroy your knees. I'm going to get so close to you. I want to hear what you have to say. I'm going to bother you. Sayyid said, La haraja fil fiqh, expect 3 a.m. phone calls. How about I put that to the side? What if I want to become the alim? But do I have to do all this? You don't have to. I'm just saying it's healthier to do that. So you're not wandering life ignorant. You always have someone available. However, you want to embark on this journey? What if it's a bit too late for you? Think, well, I'm a bit too old. I've reached a point. It's inconvenient. I remind you of the story of the scholar, Siraj ad-Din as-Sakkaki. Very famous incident, well known. He wrote the book Mafatih al-Ulum. Siraj ad-Din as-Sakkaki was a locksmith. He makes locks. Back then, it was a genuine profession because they're intricate, you know. The king in Iraq says, I need a special lock for my bedroom. And I need it fancy and I need it nice. Who is the best locksmith? They said, Siraj ad-Din Maulana. Siraj ad-Din Sakkaki, bring him. He makes him a lock. He commissions this. And the king is so happy. Sometimes when you praise people, you might overpraise them, but the overpraise can get to a person. So Siraj ad-Din, when he made the lock, the wazir of the king walked by. He says, Oh, Royal Highness, who's this guy? He had just gotten the lock he made and he was so happy. So the king wanted to praise him. And he said, هَذَا عَالِمٌ كَبِيرٌ. This is a great scholar. He's a locksmith. But he's like, no, I wanna thank you so much. I want to make you feel good. هَذَا عَالِمٌ كَبِيرٌ. This is a big scholar. Siraj ad-Din, by the way, is in his 50s. He's like, me, scholar? I kind of like the sound of that. Sounds nice, me, the scholar. You know what? Let me try and enroll in the Hawza. He's in his 50s. I literally met a young man a few weeks ago. He said, Sayyidina, I would have loved to join Hawza, but the train has left. So how old are you? It's like 20. So when do you think Hawza starts? When you're 2? The train, I'm old. Oh, you have back pain, huh? 20? Wake up, bro. Don't put a age limit on ilm. It's ilm. 20 years old. Siraj ad-Din Sakkaki is 50. It's like, I like the sound of the alimun kabir. Yalla, why not? What is it? It's ilm. It's fiqh. Usul. It's easy. He goes in the Hawza in Kufa. And he attends the wrong class. He attends the non-Shia session. He's a Shi'i. He attends a session of Abu Hanifa, his fiqh. Abu Hanifa is an alim of the Hanafi school of thought, the non-Shia of the Sunni world. He's like, let me just attend. He sits at a random halaqa and he sits down. He looks and the teacher says, but he notices all the students are young shabab. And that makes the guy a bit insecure. They're young, and he's the oldest one. And then he says, tomorrow I will test you guys from what we learned today. Today, the class was about, and this is the ruling of what they discussed, that if you take a najis piece of leather, and he specifically said, dog leather, ajallakum Allah. This is an animal that we know is najis. He says, but if you take the leather, okay, and you tan it, you make it usable, workable, you tan the leather becomes tahir through the act of istihala. This is in the fiqh, by the way, of Abu Hanifa. This is not in our fiqh. The leather stays najis, even if you tan it, whatever. Let's say if it's like from the world of swine, whatever, ajallakum Allah. In this case, to them, that's enough for it to make it tahir. Guys, I'm going to ask you this question tomorrow. Yalla, ready? All right, goodbye. Tomorrow, they come. Sirajuddin Sakaki is like, okay, in the opinion of Abu Hanifa, if you tan dog leather, it becomes tahir. Okay, in the opinion of Abu Hanifa, he's repeating it. He attends the class. The teacher says, okay, what was the class about yesterday? What did we discuss? What was the rule we spoke about? Sirajuddin, how about you go first as you are the oldest one? Respect to the elderly. You know what Sirajuddin said? He's supposed to say, I learned yesterday, if you tan the leather of a dog, it becomes tahir in the opinion of Abu Hanifa. Sirajuddin Sakaki said, if you tan the leather of Abu Hanifa, he becomes najis like his dog. The shabab all around started laughing. Oh, this old man, miskeen, his old age got to his head. Sirajuddin wanted to cry. Sirajuddin left the room. He's like, I'm done. I am old. I can't learn. No pun intended, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So Sirajuddin is like, forget this, ya ammi. What was I even thinking? Alim kabir. The guy said a word and it got to my head. Until he gets to a river. And he sees in the river, this story has two versions, by the way, but they're essentially the same. The river inspires him because he notices that there's a rock in the middle of the water. This rock is a boulder, but the water, from how many years it's been flowing, it basically split the rock in half. The water began to run over it. Clearly you can see that the water smoothed the rock, such that it left like what you can say like a curve in the middle. Sirajuddin just looks at that. That's all he's doing. He didn't run into something, he just looks at a rock and water. And look how Allah guides people. His ayat are just naturally on the earth. He says, I wonder how long it took the water to smooth out the rock such that it could go over it. Wonder how many years. And it's just a matter of days and time, but you can even change the status of a rock. Khalas, it's just days and time. And you could even change someone like me, Sirajuddin. Ya Allah, I'll give it another shot. He got some courage and he goes and he attends the class. They all laughed at him. The next day, the third day, and he continued to attend these classes until he begins when? He's 50. Until he becomes what we call the equivalent today of an ayatullah. An ayatullah, and he writes a very good work of Islamic fiqh called Mafatih al-Ulum. You can start anytime you like. You can begin your journey. In the next, inshallah, nights, you will see how figures of inspiration who were sisters and women, confined to their limitations, became legions of ilm, of wisdom. Don't undermine any situation. Jabal Amil produced some ulama. Wallah, you hear about how they were in jail. Al-Shaheed al-Awwal, Wal-Shaheed al-Thani. He's in jail. And in 1 week, he writes Al-Lum'a al-Dimashqiyya, the encyclopedia of fiqh, that today, when we studied in the house, it took us 2 years to finish. In 1 week, you did that? In what paper? Some say he used his blood. Some say he had to smuggle ink. In those circumstances, you do this? That's a huge inspiration, honestly. You read about the tadhiyat and the sacrifices. Look at someone who learns about 10 languages. Ayatollah Sheikh Hassan Zada Amuli passed away recently. He knows French fluently. He's like, I want to debate the Orientalists. I'm going to read their work in their language. Look at individuals who traveled the world just to get hadiths. Al-Allam al-Amini went back then. It's hard. He went to India, went to Syria, went to Mecca, went to Egypt by foot just to collect hadith. And he compiled Mawsu'at al-Ghadir for us today. These are reminders and inspirations. Look at someone like Sayyid Abdul Hassan Sharafuddin al-Amili. Sayyid Abdul Hassan Sharafuddin, one of the Maraji', again from Jabal Amil. He goes to Hajj, famous incident that till today we use as an example to have polemical debates with the non-Shia. He goes and one of the scholars from the non-Shia meets him. He says, Antum al-Shia, you guys worship your imams, you do shirk. Go back to Allah. You hear this a lot. Go back to Allah. He says, what do you mean? He's like, I see you Shia. You go to your haram, you go to your dharih, and you kiss the dharih. I mean, why are you kissing something? It's kissing a grave. It's not even him that you're trying to like embrace. You're kissing the outside. That has no value. Sayyid Abdul Hussein Sharafuddin, he says, before I answer your question, I'd like to gift you something. Here's a Quran al-Kareem. The guy, the alim, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The alim takes the Quran al-Kareem, and the first thing he does is he kisses it. Sayyid Abdul Hussein Sharafuddin tells him, why'd you kiss the fold of the Quran? Why are you kissing the cover? He says, I'm not kissing the cover, I'm embracing the Quran for what it has inside it, for the depth that it carries inside the Quran. But what can I do? This is my form of symbolic expression. He says, Ya Ammi, likewise, when we visit the dharih, I show my love and devotion by grabbing to that dharih. Sometimes by rubbing my cheeks on it, as Imam al-Sadiq says, رحم الله تلك الخدود التي تقلبت على ضريح أبي عبد الله الحسين. May Allah have mercy even on the cheeks that spread on the dharih and turn on the dharih and the qabr of Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam. What you're doing is you're showing your love for who's inside it. Like if you were to kiss the Quran, for what's inside it. That man, then and there, that alim, you know what he said? He was the custodian of the haram. He says, you got me. I honestly didn't know about that point of view. I gift you the opportunity to enter the Kaaba with me and wash it with me. And you had a marji' deen, enter the Kaaba. Could you imagine this today, by the way? Enter the Kaaba and wash it with the basically marji' of the non-Shia of that time. An expression of interesting unity right there. Why? Because one decided to debate, and he was known for debates with his contribution, al-muraji'at. These are our inspirations. These are our sources of guidance and inspiration. These bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's through them, if you were to ask them, who was your inspiration in such moments, in such times, in such difficulties, they will all tell you one man's name, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Not only because of his sacrifices on the 10th of Muharram, the eve being tonight, brothers and sisters, but because of his impeccable wisdom in times of turbulence and turmoil. There will be the night, inshallah, we will all gather for the ilm of Imam al-Hussein, his outright piercing knowledge that many people have far overlooked. Sayyid al-Shuhada is madloom. Sayyid al-Shuhada, before he is a soldier, he is du'a arafa. If you read those lines, you become enamored. You can't but love his descriptions. That's the alim that we love. You ask many people, why do you love Imam Hussein? He's the grandson of Rasulullah. Not for the vision, not for the foresight, not for the intellectuality, not for the wisdom. We, as lovers of Sayyid al-Shuhada, we love him for all of these, plus the 10th of Muharram is the cherry on top of why he is impeccable and resounding in who he is. Ask the scholars, they will all tell you, if I think I'm smart, do you know who I am? Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad al-Rawhani, one of our maraji' says, compared to Imam al-Hussein, you know who I am? And you think I'm a marji' deen? If Hussein is the sea, I am that little boy playing in the sand next to it, not even near the water. Hussein ibn Ali. Imam al-Hussein, his wisdom to show that even in times of challenge, I can forgive my enemy like Hur ibn Yazid. Imam al-Hussein's intellectuality, he enters Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram. So right now, Sayyid al-Shuhada, on a day like today, he is making his way to the land of Nainawa. Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi stops him. When he stops him, brothers and sisters, Imam al-Hussein is blocking him from the water of Furat. Now imagine that. We have heard is Imam Hussein is prevented from the water. In the initial days, he has access. The opposition with 10,000 soldiers doesn't have access. Imam al-Hussein is asked by Hur, can you give us some water? Imam Hussein says, yes. A man by the name of Ali ibn Ta'an al-Muharibi. He's on the side of Hur. So he's here to stop Imam al-Hussein essentially. He was so thirsty that the hadith says, sometimes thirst, if you're very thirsty, it can also blur your vision. May Allah never give you that moment. And you think about lines like when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam lost al-Akbar, as-Sayyida Sukaina says, his body is that way, Imam Hussein's running this way. And she says, Father, he's this way. He says, don't blame me. I can barely see from how much his death has pained me. Ali ibn Ta'an al-Muharibi, he can barely see, brothers and sisters. He's the opposition. And he's trying to drink water. Imam Hussein has granted them permission to do so. As he's drinking water, the water falls on him. It spills on him. Imam al-Hussein begins to tell his enemy, no, hold the cup like this angle. He still can't do it. He's probably very frail and tired. So do you know what Imam al-Hussein does, alayhi salam? He, bi abi huwa wa ummi, picks up the water and he begins to feed it to him. Salamullahi alayh. Aba Abdullah, you quenched the thirst of your enemy. You were prevented from that water and you were killed by the Furat Atshan. But I wonder, when you were killed and slaughtered mercilessly, thirsty by the Furat, when you had the chance to drink, but out of principle you refused, I wonder how your mother, Lady Zahra in Jannah would have felt. And you know who tells us this? Sahib al-Zaman in Ziyar al-Nahiya al-Muqaddasa. He narrates to you and I that what happened to Sayyida Zahra on the 10th of Muharram. Imam Sahib al-Zaman says in the Ziyar al-Nahiya, فقام ناعيك عند قبر جدك الرسول فنعاك إليه بالدمع الهطول قائلا يا رسول الله قتل سبطك وفتاك واستبيح أهلك وحماك ووقع المحظور بعترتك وذويك وسبيت بعدك ذراريك. O Rasulullah, what happened to your beloved Hussein was that he was killed by the Furat without a drop of water, and his family was taken captive. How did Rasulullah reply? Imam Mahdi says, فَزَّعَجَ الرَّسُولُ. Rasulullah became depressed. وَبَكَى قَلْبُهُ الْهَطُولُ. And his heart began to cry. وَعَزَّاهُ بِكَ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَالْأَنْبِيَاءُ. And angels and the Anbiya all gave Rasulullah their condolences. وَفُجِعَتْ بِكَ أُمُّكَ الزَّهْرَاءُ. And your mother Zahra became distressed. Oh Zahra, if you're here with us today, forgive us for these lines that you have to hear every year. وفجعت بك أمك الزهراء واختلف جنود الملائكة المقربين تعزي أباك أمير المؤمنين. And the Malaika all one by one offered their condolences to your father Ali ibn Abi Talib. وأقيمت لك المآتم في أعلى علين. And Ma'tam al-Hussein was held for you in Jannah. وَلَطَمَتْ عَلَيْكَ الْحُورُ الْعِينَ. And the maidens of Jannah all begun to do latam, mourning you, Ya Aba Abdullah. I leave you with this one line and I conclude. Imam al-Sadiq says, on the day of judgment, when the Malaika and all the khalq are gathered, Allah will say, O أو معاشر الإنس والجن غضوا أبصاركم, lower your gaze. Fatima al-Zahra is walking. As Sayyidah Zahra walks, the hadith says she then shows the bloodied stained shirt of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and she begins to complain to Allah, look what they did, Ya Allah, to my beloved boy. Look what they did, Ya Allah, to my son. أين الطالب بدم المقتول بكربلاء.